so excited that you've come again for another episode of Meet My Mississippi Authors and Artists. And I'm telling you, we have the most amazing guests, and we did not disappoint this time. Today we have Dr. Ed Meek. Of course, you know, I try to let them introduce themselves and let them tell you who they are, where they're from. So I'm going to let him do that. And just tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm from Oxford, and I came from Charleston on the hillside of the Mississippi Delta. I'm just a country boy who came to Oxford and am very blessed to have gotten an education and an opportunity to serve Mississippi, and we love everything that goes on in North Mississippi.
Okay, so you grew up in Charleston, you went to school in Charleston, graduated from, was it Charleston High School?
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
I was editor of a little newspaper, high school, and started to work at the local newspaper, the Mississippi Sun, in the 6th grade.
Oh my
and worked every day, every Saturday, all full time in the summer. And just to show you my value, my salary for 6 years was $7.40 a week.
Ooh, you were rolling in it, weren't you?
Now my publisher, who's Bill May, who's still alive, he's 96, he said, Ed, you overpaid even then. So why? But that's what got me started.
What was the name of the paper?
Mississippi Sun.
Mississippi Sun. And what were you writing?
I was just a little printer's devil. Back then it was hot type and a whole different era. I melted the metal and helped run things and did everything, and that started my career in journalism.
Oh my goodness. Why were you interested in that?
Well, because I had to work. We were a poor family, and I wanted to work, so that was a great job for me.
Okay.
And that led to an interest in journalism.
Okay.
But I couldn't spell, I couldn't write. I still can't spell, I still can't write.
Okay, here's another one. Woo-hoo.
But what I learned is I decided years ago, I told my wife, I said, honey, I'm gonna quit trying to learn to spell and write. I'm too old. I'm just gonna hire somebody to correct my work.
Absolutely.
And I've done that my whole life. I've got a whole line of people in my life that correct my spelling.
Read this,
that's not my skill.
Exactly. Wonderful. Okay, so after you graduated from high school, then what?
Well, I initially was checking out Mississippi State. Well, first of all, I was a very poor student.
Don't tell all the people in Ole Miss.
Yeah, well, I was a poor student. And I had no business going to college, but I had a high school English teacher, the last semester of high school, said she gave us a contract grading system. And that is, if you want to make a C, you do this or B this.
Oh,
to make an A, you had to write a research paper.
Okay.
I said, ain't no way. I'm just give me a C and let me out of here. But I looked around, I saw old Judy over there, old Joe, Bill, all going phase. I got to feeling bad. So I said, well, I'm going to try it too, the last minute.
Okay.
I made the only A in class.
Oh, my goodness.
And she called me in the last day of school. She said, you ought to go to college. I said, what do you mean, me? So I'd never heard of Ole Miss. I'd been to Mississippi State band camp. Okay. So I'd go to Mississippi State. Okay. Walk over there. Okay. Walking on the campus, big old football player type, stopped me on the side and said, what are you doing here, boy? I said, well, I'm coming here to major in journalism. He said, we ain't got none of that. You need to be at Ole Miss. I called my mama. My mama called a prominent politician, George Payne Casa. He said, get on the Trailways bus. I'll have you meet somebody, and somebody meet you in Oxford. And I was met by the chairman of the Department of Journalism at the Trailways bus station in Oxford. And that's how I got to Ole Miss.
Wow. Okay, that was
58.
1958, you got to Ole Miss. What was it like at Ole Miss when you first got there? What did you think
of it? It was small, about 3,500 students, which was huge for me. I had never been out of the state except to Mississippi, to Memphis. That was north to me.
Oh, that's the big city.
You know, so I didn't know the rest of the world.
Right.
So it was really overwhelming. And the first semester, I was brilliant. I failed 4 out of 6 courses. I had no business being there.
Okay.
And I didn't do much better the second semester until I married my bride in June of that year.
Okay.
And she said, we're not going to live like this. You're going to be a student.
Okay.
And I made good grades.
You're going to be something.
I ultimately became an A student. But you know, like many kids today, I tell people every time, it's not how smart you are. I never say how smart. It's how motivated, how committed you are.
Absolutely.
And I tell students all the time. Sometimes mothers and dads don't like to hear that, but the truth is, motivation is more important than intelligence.
And you tell that story over and over, so I have to go back because I always, every interview that I do, I kind of try to figure out how did I meet this person. Now, the way we met each other was on Facebook. I try to find anybody who posts things about Faulkner or Ole Miss or books or Mississippi State or whatever. So I started following some pictures and things that you were posting, and we just got to be Facebook friends.
Right.
I sent you a Facebook request, and we got to be friends.
And then I came and tried to hire you.
Okay, exactly. I'm getting to that. So around 2015, I was writing all my diva on a dime things about me spending $1 for my dresses and $5 for my dresses and things. And you were like, well, telling me about Hottie Toddy, and I was talking about promoting a positive Mississippi. And you said, I would love for you to maybe write for Hottie Toddy. So I was like, then you wanted to come meet me so you could see what I was all about.
Becky and I came and met you.
Yes, you came to Tupelo. We met at the mall, and talking about students, that's why it kind of came to my mind, because I was at that very point at the dilemma of, I said, oh my goodness, I just got the ACT scores from my son, and they took it in the 9th grade. I didn't even know he had taken it. I'm like, who in the world makes I'm not going to embarrass him and say what it was, but it was so low. And you were like, no, don't worry about it. He'll do da-da-da. Well, the next time he did much better. But anyway, that's how we got to know each other.
And now he's at Ole Miss.
Yeah, he's going to be at Ole Miss. He just graduated from ICC, and he'll be there in the fall at Ole Miss. So Hottie Toddy, fins up, and all that. So that's how we met. And how did Hottie Toddy come about? How did that? And how many magazines have you published? Start with that too.
Over my career, we did 14 magazines.
Okay.
They were trade journals, not consumer products. But publishing was my first love, being a journalist. But I began to see the decline, what was happening some time back. So we got in the trade show business. And the trade show business is really where we made some money. We made money in magazines, but that was an entry point. And first one thing led to another, and then when we sold our company, we owe everything to Ole Miss. Becky and I both, she got a master's, and I got 2 degrees and a doctorate from Southern. We all love Ole Miss, and we owe it everything. So when we sold our company, we would do something. And I had seen the demise coming in my business of the change in journalism, not demise. So we came up with the idea, I stole the idea for integrated marketing communications from a fellow named John Levine, who was Dean of Northwestern. This was a new concept, combining journalism, marketing, PR, and it was so offensive to his journalism faculty, he got fired. I picked it up. And said, we're going to start a school for that. Well, there was a lot of resistance to that at Ole Miss, because old-line journalists don't want to recognize. In my era, as a journalist, the journalists never talked to the advertising guy. That's changed now. They work together.
Everybody has to, yes. And that's called what? New media.
New media, right. Integrated marketing communications. So now of the students at Ole Miss, in the school just has had extraordinary growth.
It has. I'm talking about internet. It's just like, you know.
Yeah, we had under 300 students. We now got about 1,600, I understand. Still about under 300 are journalists.
Every time I'm on Facebook, they're winning some kind of award for something.
Yeah, it's just really
being
been extraordinary.
recognized for something.
And it's a reflection of what's changed in society. And that came from the frustrations I had as a businessman. I saw it coming, and something had to change. So Ole Miss has really taken a global leadership role in that, and now many other schools have copied.
Now, how did you see it coming, Dr.
Well, because I saw the decline in my revenues and the changing in readership. And I got into the internet early, and I remember when the internet was put in Oxford, Mississippi. A guy from Jackson rented space next to my bathroom to put in internet. Now, I didn't know what it was. He said, you want to see what this is?
Wow.
He pulled up and said, yeah, that's great. He said, would you like me to pull a line? I said, yeah. So I got access to the internet long before many other people. Didn't know one to have a clue what it was. But it was amazing. And then, so I began to see the difference, what was going to happen, and that made me think about it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now fast forward to this brilliant, amazing book. Tell us how you started with the idea of Riot. Well, give us the history of the what the book is about.
Well, Riot is a photo essay of the night James Meredith came on campus. And here's what happened. The late Larry Speaks was my best buddy. Larry became Ronald Reagan's press secretary. Larry was an extraordinary journalist. I was just a bump and grind journalist. But I followed him around like a puppy, and he taught me. And I came back from hitchhiked. We hitchhiked everywhere. We didn't have cars. Hitchhiked to Ole Miss, came back on a Sunday afternoon. Larry called me and he said, Ed, he said, marshals are landing out at the airport. Let's get out there. So we go out there and we take pictures of the marshals all lined up, and we didn't know what was going on. But ultimately, James, we ended up on campus. The marshals surrounded the Lyceum.
Okay, wait. Tell the people why the marshals were there. Because the president had declared an order for them to what?
The president ordered the marshals to take over the university and admit James Meredith.
Absolutely. Okay.
James was brought to campus and put in Baxter Hall.
Right.
While the marshals surrounded the Lyceum to rescue him the next day. The Lyceum is the main building of the campus. So while the marshals surrounded the Lyceum, they all had the helmets on and so forth, well, all of us gathered out front, students. We had hotty-toddies and pep rallies, and it was a pep rally, and it was fun. Larry and I were just having a blast, because we were journalists too. But then about dark, I heard something go whoop, 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 bam. I looked up there and a bottle of some kind. It hit a marshal upside the head, hurt him. And I turned around, and literally, to my memory, I didn't see a single student. They were gone. They were other people. The students left. And I subsequently, when the riot broke out, and the tear gas started flowing, the bullets started flying, there were snipers. Of course, you know, Kennedy brought in 30,000 troops.
Right.
The 101st Airborne.
Exactly.
This was a war zone.
Yes.
He shut down Oxford, the campus. Took
Yes.
over. But in the course of that, the town was covered in tear gas. And to avoid tear gas, you got on the ground. You crawled on your belly.
Where were you, Miss Dr. Meek?
I was just...
You were just standing there?
Yeah, I was right there in the middle of it, sure. And I got on the ground. Larry and I did. And we kept on reporting and made photographs and the pictures in that book.
Look, if it was me, y'all, this book wouldn't have never happened. Because, baby, no, I'm gone.
The point I want to make is this event went from a student-led, fun-filled activity to, I didn't know it at the time, but individuals on public television stations, the state called for people to come save Mississippi.
Oh, really?
I rolled over a boy in the darkness that night. I recognized him from my first grade from Oakland. His name was Toby. I won't give his name. And Toby had a gun. I said, Toby, what are you doing? He said, well, hell, they said come save Ole Miss. I'm here to save Ole Miss. Well, that's what happened. People came all over the country with hunting rifles and everything, and there were snipers, there were bullets flying. So it was not fun. It was real.
Yes.
It was terrible.
Yes.
And Kennedy did the right thing. If he hadn't sent in the 101st Airborne, the marshals would have been overwhelmed.
Okay, so the night before, was there a football game or something in Jackson, and the governor was telling everybody we're going to save Ole Miss, and you know, so he revved everybody.
He revved it was a pep rally in Jackson.
Okay,
revved everybody up.
Okay.
So the pep rally kind of continued on campus.
Okay.
And as long as it was students, there was no racial connotation in my mind at the time. We were out there hotty-toddying and having a good time. And it was just kids having a good time. Now, of course, I now...
And you were how old at that time when that
18.
happened? 18 years old. Wow. Okay.
But what happened is the adults got involved. It's sort of like these soccer games when the adults get involved, it turns ugly.
Yeah,
that's what happened. The older people got involved, pushed us out, and it was a real issue. So,
okay, so how many people were hurt, injured, killed, whatever, at that incident, that night, that week?
I don't know about the injured, but 2 people were killed. A French journalist and another person were killed.
Okay.
And that's really fortunate because what happened is the marshals used hand grenade type tear gas devices that you lob or you shoot. They ran out and they switched to a rocket. It was a projectile that came out of a gun looked like, and it was shaped like a rocket. And I have a picture of one. It hit a tree near me, and when it hits, it explodes, and that's how the tree. When it dug into a tree, it exploded. Well, those things were flying everywhere. If that would hit you, you'd be dead in a heartbeat.
Oh my goodness!
But they were struggling. They had to survive. They got down to.
Where were all of those people, the marshals and all those people? Where were they staying in Oxford? What were they doing every day in Oxford?
They were hunkering down in the Lyceum. They ultimately, when the 101st Airborne came in, they built camps overnight. They put foxholes around the campus. When the smoke cleared the next morning, the golf course, which is right at the edge of the campus, between the campus and Highway 6, I took a picture. There were 8 to 10 Jeeps wide all the way to the highway, maybe 70 Jeeps with 6 men each and many of them had cannons loaded.
And I think there's a YouTube video of Dan Rather coming down here for that. So
Dan's first story, I made a picture of Dan, and I gave it to him when he came back to campus. He was with the South Texas TV station, a nobody. And this made Dan Rather's career.
That made him,
his career.
Okay, wow. Oh my goodness, the history and all of that.
But what helped me is I later became director of public relations for a generation. All the great journalists of that era, Nelson, Benton, Dan Rather, all Chet Huntley and Dave Meek, I met all of them as a kid at Ole Miss.
Wow.
And I maintained those contacts. Well, that helped me over my career because I could call Dan Rather on a first name basis.
Okay,
and that helped me get my job done because my career was spent trying to redo and change what happened in '62.
Right.
You know, just we did our best, but it was
okay. Let's stay with this '62 thing. What's going on? How many days was this kind of going on? And what you
happened?
Just snapping pictures the whole time, snapping pictures.
Well, actually, there was about a 6 month to a year period prior to the riots when there were journalists would come from all over to campus because the rumor was James was coming to campus. False alarm. There was Governor Barnett came in, Lieutenant Governor Johnson stood at the gate. There are all kinds of false starts, and that brought people in. So when it really happened, a lot of people, well, it's just another occasion. But then we actually had, and one of my jobs was to register journalists, because I then took a job at the university. My first job, paid job, was as a science writer to rebuild the institution's image. We cataloged all the journalists. There are 361 journalists from all over the world, China, Russia, you name it. So the image of Mississippi and the image of America was created right there. And it changed
so
the world.
Day that he was admitted to Ole Miss, tell me about that day and where the students were and what they did and what you did and all that.
Well, the marshals, James was housed in Baxter Hall, which was the furthest away dorm. The marshals went to pick him up, and I went with them. And fortunately, I got to know the marshals that night because my office was actually in the Lyceum. I had an office right across from the chancellor as a student, as a student journalist. Larry Speaks and I did. We had teletypes, we had wire photo transmitters. We were performing as professional journalists, but we were kids.
Wow, I know my office.
But,
Go on.
So we got to know the officers. One time, of course, at one point, the marshals grabbed everybody, arrested everybody. Well, I got arrested too. And a marshal saved me. He said, hey, wait, he's one of us. And they pulled me out. Well, because I knew them, I got to go everywhere where they went. So I went with them to pick James up. I'd not met James. James came down the stairs. He went to his first class. I took the only pictures available of him in his first class.
You did, and we're going to show that.
Which was a secret. You know, it was, Kennedy had made a big deal. He and Robert and the president both had instructed everybody. Barnett and he had cut a deal. Well, part of the deal was nobody was to interfere with the academic process. James was a student, and let him be a student. Don't interfere. No pictures.
Okay, you took a picture of him, and that's him sitting in a chair with nobody in the classroom. Were there people in the class?
Well,
Did there people in the classroom?
What happened, I said to myself, I just can't not do this. So I put on a raincoat and hid my camera underneath the raincoat. And I went with the marshals, and when he went into class, if you look at that, there are about 10 snapshots there. The class was full. But as people realized James Merritt, they started leaving. And ultimately, you'll see the professor talking to a student. He looks up and he sees, that's James. They leave. So James by himself. Well, I captured all that, but I kept it secret for 40 years. Why, I don't know, except I did.
I'm saying he's just sitting there by himself. So that was kind of like the Ruby Bridges thing, where the kids didn't want.
And you know, when I met the way when finally the university decided it needed to patch things up with James Merritt. That's the way I would classify. I was called saying, "Can you get James to come to campus? Let's try to."
And when was that?
I've forgotten.
Okay.
That was about a long time ago. So I sent James a personal note with that photograph. That's who called me. He said, "I remember you taking that picture." Well, that's how we became friends.
Wonderful.
We've been friends ever since.
Wonderful.
And he said yes. So he came back, and I never will forget this story. And I hope my good friend Robert Kayak will not mind me saying this. Robert was chancellor, great chancellor. We had James there for the first of a number of ceremonies to mend fences. Well, James was still a politician. So we had all these nice things to say. James gets to the podium. He said, well, Chancellor, I appreciate this. And you know I'm running for mayor of Jackson. And I know you're going to write every alum and tell them to vote for me. The chancellor looked at me like, oh, my Lord, what are we going to do? Like, do something. What can I do? You know, but that was just James. You know, it's just funny. And we, you know.
So the idea, what did you do with all these pictures that you had? And when was the idea that you were going to put them in a book? And how did you catalog them? I mean,
well, I never did anything with them until Dean Will Lawton of what was then the Meek School saw the pictures and had the idea and said, we need to make a book of this.
Wow.
And I didn't think anything about it and never thought about doing it, but we did it. And I'm glad I did because it is a record.
Goodness.
It's not a great book.
It is a great book, people. Don't listen to what he's talking about. Get the book. Everybody needs it in their home.
I was shocked.
Stop the madness, Dr. Meek. You know what I say. Stop the madness. It's an excellent book.
Well, James Meredith came to the book signing in Jackson with unannounced.
Okay.
Walked up on the stage with me, took the microphone, and he told the audience, he said, I want you to know there are exactly 386 books on the right, and I want you to know this is the best book of all.
Yes, and that's on YouTube. I posted that. And
after it was over, though, I said, James, I know why you said that. He said, why? I said, well, you were locked up. You didn't know what was going on. He said, yeah, that's right. So he saw the pictures for the first time. He saw what went on around him.
Really?
He didn't know it. He had some idea.
Right.
But the depth of what was happening, he had not experienced when he saw the book.
Wonderful. And from that, you all keep in touch and you're friends and all that. So that is wonderful. Okay. We go all around, you know, if you had talked to me, I'm just like a whirlwind. I go back and forth and back and forth. Let's go back again to Ole Miss when you first went and you were majoring in journalism, correct?
Right.
Okay. So now you did something at Ole Miss, like you were photographing the beauties of the month or something.
Right.
What was
Campus
that?
Cuties.
Campus Cuties. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Back
how
then,
did that come about?
Well, the Mississippian was a weekly.
Okay.
And every week in the bottom right corner was a cheesecake picture.
Okay.
You remember the pictures of all the military planes of Betty Grable?
Yeah, absolutely.
Same kind of thing, except the girls were in shorts. The dean would never let a woman wear anything except a high neck shirt.
Okay.
There was nothing risque about it at all. But they were cute pictures. Well, Larry Speaks was a campus cutie photographer, and he was a big man on campus.
Okay.
Larry graduated, and I inherited it. So little old Ed Meek from Charleston, I became big man on campus. And some of the most prominent women of my age in Mississippi today were campus cuties. I got to pick them.
Okay.
So I'll give you an example. The late Thad Cochran. One of the girls that I was really sweet on, and the way I got to meet her was Rose Clayton from New Albany, Mississippi. Her father was a judge, a prominent lawyer, and her uncle was a judge. I got introduced to Rose because I said, well, I'd like you to be campus cutie. Oh, she was flattered on her. Picture came out, Thad Cochran called me and says, hey, Meek, I want to meet Rose. I introduced her. He goes and marries her. So there was a downside.
That's funny. That's funny. Oh my goodness. So how long did you do that? The whole time that you were there?
For about a year until I graduated, a year and a half. Okay,
the Daily Mississippian. How long has that been? Since Ole Miss has been there, they've had the Daily Mississippian?
No, it was a weekly paper long before that. Throughout my career, I would have to say maybe in the 70s. Late 70s it turned to be a daily.
Now everybody in the world knows I'm a huge Elvis fan and an even more huge Faulkner fan, right? So you got to take pictures at Roanoke with Mr. Faulkner.
Yes, Colonel J.R. Cofield, who was my mentor, let me use his darkroom. He was an extraordinary historian.
That's John's great-grandfather, right?
His great-grandson is John Cofield.
Yes, who has an interview. Y'all gotta watch that.
He has his great-grandfather's talent for stories and storytelling.
He does.
Same thing.
He does.
Well, the colonel got a call. He was known as Faulkner's photographer.
Yes.
Mr. Faulkner wanted some pictures of him riding his horses. Well, the colonel was an inside photographer. He had a great big old inside camera. I call it a Matthew Brady camera. So he called me and he said, would you like to take a picture? I said, you're kidding. Yes, you bet.
Oh, really?
And he said,
I don't want to go over there.
He said, okay. So he said, let me tell you something. I had a nickname. I came from Charleston. My nickname was Budgie, B-U-D-G-I-E. And my records at Ole Miss came across as Budgie. until an editor of the Birmingham
Okay,
News.
y'all read my poem called Nicknames. We all have nicknames, okay? We're all about that in the South.
As a student, I was working for the Birmingham News, and about 11 o'clock one night, my editor called me up and said, "What is this budgie?" I said, "That's my name." He said, "What's your real name?" I said, "What do you mean?" I said, "My real name is Edwin Ernest Meek." He said, "We're going to change it." I said, "Don't you call me Edwin, don't you call me Ernest." He said, "You read the paper tomorrow."
Edward Ernest
Ernest
Meek.
Meek, said a budgie. So for the first time, the next day, I had a front page story byline with my picture, and my name was Ed Meek.
Okay.
So that's how I became Ed Meek.
Okay.
So Mr. Faulkner said, "Budgie, you go out to take a picture, but let me tell you, he knew me well. He said, 'Don't you take a picture of Mr. Faulkner. Don't you embarrass me.' He just preached to me." I said, "Yes, sir, yes, sir." Well, Mr. Faulkner was just as nice as he could be. We got out and we climbed through a barbed wire fence.
Okay, wait. When you went up to the place, you knocked on the door or whatever, or he was outside or what? Oh my goodness!
Yeah, he was standing outside. He had an old tattered coat in the hot. It was just hot as it could be. And we climbed through the fence, and then he forgot something. So he goes back and he turned his back. I snapped the picture. And
Yes,
this book
we're gonna
is
show that picture.
one of the best pictures I think I've
Faulkner
ever
walking
made.
away.
And it's the best picture I ever made of him. It's the back of his coat with 5 big holes. But there's his friend Andrew Price, African American gentleman, old coon dog, an old plow. It's just my greatest
It's priceless.
picture.
It
I
is.
think.
It is just absolutely
So
amazing.
Mr. Faulkner comes back, and I didn't tell him anything. He said, "You ready to take some pictures?" I said, "Yes, sir." So he gets in his horse, and he's a horse with jumpers. He positions me by a hedgerow, and he's jumping back and forth. I'm sitting there watching back and forth. He gets off, his horse comes over, sweating like a mule, red face. Said, "Well, Mr. Meek, did you get some good ones?" I said, "Mr. Faulkner, I'm waiting for you to tell me to start." I thought he was going to die of a heart attack.
Oh, me too. Oh my.
He said,
what?
"Would you please start?" Well, of course, I just tore it up, but I was trying to do what Colonel Caulfield told
You
me.
just stand there listening.
Yeah, I just sitting there watching. But
You
we
would have
made
been
the
fired
picture.
if that was a job. You would have been fired
Yep.
on that right there.
I'm
Oh
sure,
my
sure.
goodness.
But we made the pictures, and it was just an amazing thing for me. And then about 3 weeks later, I developed proof sheets, you call them. It took them right out that day to him.
Really? What did he
Because
say?
he had to have them right quick. He wanted to send them to Jill, his daughter, who was in Virginia.
Okay.
Well, he didn't call me back. About 3 weeks later, Colonel Caulfield called me. He said, "Budgie, you got a problem. You got to see Mr. Faulkner." I said, "What's the problem?" He said, "Something wrong with the photograph." I said, "Oh, Lord." And I thought to myself, here I've screwed up the greatest writer fiction of the 20th century. What have I done?
Time.
So I go to Mr. Faulkner. He's standing in the little gravel driveway. He puts his arm around me. He says, "Come on, son." We go back to his log cabin, which you'll see in a lot of the pictures. There was a stump there. He pulled out of his sleeve a dirty old handkerchief, laid it out, drew a picture of a horse, handed me the pen. He said, "Mr. Meek, show me the most important part of the horse." Well, I knew what that was. Larry Speaks and I had made a lot of money taking horse show pictures at the time. Back in the old days, they have these horse shows, and everybody got a ribbon, stood in front of the horse with a ribbon, and you know that was a society kind of thing. Well, we made those pictures, made money. I put it right there on the mains. He said, "That's what I thought, Mr. Meek. The most important part of a jumper is the ass. You shot from the wrong end."
I love him.
So-
Don't you love Faulkner? Don't you love him?
So the muscle structure of the rear end is what he wanted. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I said, "Well, let me do it again." He said, "Oh, well, sir, we'll do it again." Well, he got a little bit too much, was thrown by Stonewall Jackson, which is one of the horses I took, and literally was carried drunken to a halfway house in Olive Branch, Bahia, fell down the stairs, and that's how he died. History's tried to cover that up, but that's what happened. I know what happened. So I never got to take the pictures again. But,
Wait, hold on. That was the same day, the same day or the same week that he died? You were saying he was taken to the halfway house.
No, he lived a week or two after that.
Okay.
But sometime after that. Now, here's the point I forgot to make. He wanted to pay me right then. I said, "No, sir, Mr. Faulkner, I didn't do the job." He said, "No, I insist." I said, "Well, would you write me a check for $1?" Now, to ask for an autograph William Faulkner was a big deal, because when I came to Ole Miss, everybody said, "Don't you ever, if you see Mr. Faulkner, you walk around him." I was scared to death. He was a gentleman. He was great.
That's what they
I said, would you write a check for me or autograph a picture?" He said, "Your choice. That's how I'll bring the picture out." Well, he was dead before I got the picture out. So I didn't get paid, I didn't get an autograph, but I have a great story and a great memory.
Goodness, why? I mean, just the fact that you did that, you were there. Oh my goodness, I'm just
Now, you mentioned Elvis, because I'm a big Elvis fan too.
Don't let me swoon over here with us talking about Elvis and Faulkner in the same breath.
We saw Elvis in the high school gym in Charleston, Mississippi, paid 25 cents, and Johnny Cash was his backup.
You're kidding me. Stop it, Dr. Meek.
It was amazing. And
Can I come live with you and your wife just to touch you?
The second time he came to play in the gym, he brought his first pink Cadillac, had a pink suit on, and I sat on the front row as a little kid. He invited us to come to his home in Shelby Forest. The next Saturday, we all went to Shelby Forest, and he wanted to show us his new motorcycle. We stood on one side of a little picket fence.
How old were you at that time?
High school.
You weren't taking the pictures?
I didn't know. I didn't take pictures for some crazy reason then. But I sat there and watched him play with the motorcycle and talk. And because they were all mostly girls, they were just fascinated.
Right, I would have been like,
But he was just a country boy from Tupelo, just nice as he could be. Just like
and pretty.
Yeah.
He wasn't handsome. He was so pretty.
But he just was a nice guy. And even, I think, when he became famous, still was a nice guy. And what I've seen, the really tall people like Faulkner and Elvis, they're good people. They learned to be good.
Everybody says Faulkner was really nice, and of course
Elvis.
He's faultless. You can't say anything bad about
Well,
Elvis.
Mr. Faulkner treated me with, I was honored, and he just was so pleasant and so nice and like a grandfather to me. And so I'm really grateful for that.
How did he talk? What kind of accent did he have?
He talked real softly. He didn't say much. He was a real soft-spoken person.
So what is the myth that, and everybody debunks the myth that he was like this recluse and everything like that. Where did that come from? Because people say it's not. It's just that he loved to be out on his farm, like to be at Roanoke or whatever. But everybody started getting this myth that he was, reclusive. But he came to town all the time. People, and all that. Where did that come from?
I don't know where it came from, because one of the first people I saw when I came to Oxford was William Faulkner.
Right.
I remember
he was at the square all the time.
He was on the square sitting there at parking meters back then. They're back now. He was sitting there with his pipe. And I recognized him. I asked him, Mr. Faulkner said, yeah. Well, he was standing in front of Gathright Reed Drugs, which Mr. Reed is the man who used to package his manuscripts in brown paper, send them off to Random House. And so I saw him all the time, but nobody, we were all cautious, leave him alone. It's all like the community protected him. Not because he wanted privacy, but they thought he was a booger-bear. But I find he wasn't a booger-bear. He was just as nice as he could be.
Oh, wow. So his statue on the square is exactly where it should be, because that's where he was. He would smoke his pipe and everything like that. So now, what do you want your legacy to be, Dr. Meek? What do you want people to know from your pictures, what you've done with your media, that you've tried to help people? What is it that you want people to remember about Ed Meek, personally and your work?
Well, I hope they'll think I was a pretty nice guy.
You are.
I tried.
You are.
I've loved students, and I've tried my best to help students.
Yes, true.
But my legacy is still developing. I'm involved in what I think is going to be a global opportunity for Mississippi in a product called graphene.
Speak up now, because wait a minute.
Go look up the word graphene. Graphene was discovered in 2004. It's the thinnest.
Wait, don't tell them about it. Tell me about it later.
It's the thinnest, strongest, most conductive material ever known. It's going to change the world. It's going to change everything.
Well, how do you know about it?
I learned about it about 10 years ago from a guy we brought in called Vito DeBerry. Vito is the second leading futurist in the world. His mentor is a guy named Alvin Toffler, and I had to read his book called Future Shock. He showed us what graphene could do. And he showed us a cell phone. It's still as a piece of paper. You can roll it up, put it in your pocket, you stretch it out, read it. We thought it was crazy. Well, that phone is now in development. The prototype exists. Graphene is going to replace silicon. It's much faster. It's 200 times stronger than steel. You can put it in concrete, and concrete will be strengthened and sway 8% either way. Think of the value of that. It's going to be enormous. And Mississippi has the potential to be the hub of that. And that's what we're working on. Senator Wicker is moving mountains.
Why does Mississippi have the opportunity to be the hub?
Because we have 4 universities involved in graphene, which I discovered. State, Southern, Ole Miss, and Jackson State. I couldn't find any other state. Now, here's the issue. The Chinese have put millions into graphene. They have 2,000 state-funded stores. The European Union has put $2.5 billion into one research program. We've done nothing. We've got 21 companies these days. The European Union came to us, we organized the National Graphene Association, and said, if you don't awaken the American giant,
Okay, now you're on the national what? Say that again.
National Graphene Association, which we organized.
Association that you organized.
And that's the leading group in the United States, just by chance. And this is a strategic material. It's going to change warfare. And the Chinese are so far ahead of us because it comes from graphite. Here's how it was discovered. It was discovered by two scientists in England who wrote that on a piece of paper, put a Scotch tape over it, pulled it off, and what was left on the Scotch tape was graphene. It's 1 atom thick. 1 atom thick. The people.
Okay, why did the Mississippi schools get involved in it at first?
Because it's a revolutionary product, and we just had people that had an interest in it.
Okay.
And we came along and helped focus that, and now the governor's helping me, the Mississippi Development Authority, particularly Senator Wicker, has taken this as a project.
Look, y'all don't be mad at me down at the legislature that he let it out. It wasn't me, that's him telling the whole world.
We believe that the hub of this valuable product, I think, in fact, I'm trying to coin the phrase Graphene Valley for Mississippi, because this is going to be enormous. And we formed a partnership with all the major universities. We formed a corporate relationship.
Let me get some stock so I can fund
well,
my
it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen in my lifetime, but you're going to see it, and your son's going to see it. And I hope that will be the legacy that I can leave, because it could solve so many problems of poverty and jobs. It could change the course of history.
But why? How's it going to do that?
Because it's the future. It's the future of innovation. It's going to affect everything. It's going to be in your hair comb. It's going to be in your shoes. Already, it's in golf balls and shoes and clothing. It can.
See, that's the difference between you and people like you and normal people. You can see the future things. Do you know what I'm saying? Like you saw that in journalism. It's a gift. You see what I'm saying? You have to be able to look and say, okay, that's going to be something. Well, and then it's something.
It's luck.
You know, just like Sam, it ain't no luck.
Well,
like Sam Walter, this is like so many other people were saying, that ain't gonna work.
I can't agree with that, but I can tell you this. I have a habit that I developed years ago. I got my PhD at Southern. I had to have a PhD if I was going to stay in higher education. I'd been out 10 years. We had 2 babies. Becky had a job. She had been in school. So I got admitted to the doctoral program in Southern, and I drove back and forth for a year and a half in an unair-conditioned Volkswagen. By the way, my roommate, I sought out, was a young African-American man. This was in '73. We had a great time, because I sought out Jim. He was in the dorm where I was. He was on one end, I was on the other. We had the floor to ourselves. We met each other. I said, Jim, I want to learn more about black people. He said, well, I want to learn more about honkies. I said, well, let's move in together. We did. And we had a great experience, and that was in '73. That was a long time ago. So I'm proud of that experience and what we had. But I had a professor at Southern that taught me the most difficult thing I ever did. He gave me a course. He said, I want you to take every known technology and give your perspective of where it could go in your lifetime.
Wow.
And you can bring to class a 3x5 card, and that's it, and it better be good. Well, you know, when you've got the world at your fingertips, it's a hard score for them. Well, the paper turned out to be something that was published by a lot of people as a visionary of a graduate student, you know. And it taught me to look for I've forgotten what it was, but it talked about satellite belts, talked about phone systems. We didn't have phones at the time. Many of the things we have today were in the infancy. Well, that started me in the habit of, I would drive to Hattiesburg with my unair-conditioned Volkswagen. I'd have a legal pad on the right-hand seat. I'd make ideas. So I said, I'm going to think of ideas of what I can do to be successful. And by the time I'd get to Hattiesburg, I'd have 11 dozen ideas, not many good. but 2 ideas, I give an example, came out of that. One, Hattiesburg had a thing we didn't have in Oxford, never heard of, convenience store.
Okay.
I looked at that, so I'm going to come back and do a convenience store. Well, I came back and I found a lot, went to the guy and I said, I want to buy that lot, convenience store. He said, what's that? I showed him. Here's a great idea, I'm going to do it. And that convenience store was there a day and I didn't get to buy a lot.
Oh my goodness, see, that's what I'm talking about.
Well, I learned from about the other thing Hattiesburg had we didn't have. We didn't have any mini storage units. So I said,
Mini storage, okay.
So I put the first mini storage unit in Oxford. Nobody but me, and I made a lot of money because I kept my mouth shut about it. But to this day, I make notes. Coming over here with Becky, I made notes on things. I make notes all the time of ideas. 99.99 are worthless. But if you just find one little gem, just one little gem, and that's what I always try to do. And I try to teach my students that. I say, scratch your noodle and make you try, because there's an idea untapped somewhere in your mind.
Absolutely, and that's a story, and that's an idea for writers and people who are writing books and photography or whatever. You have to take 100 shots maybe to get like these crazy gems of a shot. You know what I mean? Or writing books. I tell people, write in a journal. Keep your ideas. You never know where you can use it or weave it in a story or a memoir or whatever. Keep those ideas because you never know.
Well, that's the excellent idea. In fact, when I had an office, I made notes on legal pads, and I filled them up, and I had a stack that high in my bottom left drawer. I kept them all those years, and I'd go through them every now and then. Hey, and some of those ideas years later came out and were valuable. They weren't at the time because things change.
You are so modest. You have been in all kinds of things. Now tell us what the connection you had with the Tupelo furniture market.
Well, again, that was an idea that came from my travel to Hattiesburg. I saw this furniture being over in Tupelo, and I started talking to some of the good old boys. And at the time, Tupelo had big manufacturers like Futurian, Stratford, Lane, a different name at the time, and then a bunch of little guys who were making furniture out of chicken houses. Just mom and pops and big guys. Well, the only way you could sell your furniture was to go to High Point, and that really cost about $200,000 a year. So these little guys were hurting. Well, I looked around, and I did a survey, and I found 130 factories within 90 miles of Tupelo. And I said, well, why don't we bring them to Tupelo? We bring buyers to Tupelo. I wasn't certain of my own research, so I hired the Research Development Center in Jackson, which is a state agency. They did the research, and again, the question was, could we produce a market? It was 50-50. You can't. So I had to crap shoot, and I said, I'm going to start a market. I did.
Wow.
Well, I went to the little guys.
Y'all didn't even know it, did you? I'm sitting by the starter of the Tupelo furniture market.
First thing I went to were the big guys at Lane. They all threw me out on my ears. And we don't need that. Well, it didn't matter to them. They had the money to go.
Exactly.
But I went to the little guys who were struggling. They said, yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
And one big guy backed me. And Hugh McClarty with Chromecraft in Bahia was a big player at the time, still is. Hugh, at my request, he's an Ole Miss man. I called him and said, Hugh, I got all these little guys. Would you just come down and show one chair? He did. That cracked it wide open.
Wow.
And it went from there. And it's been an enormous, I lost it. I didn't have enough money to hold on to it. But it's been an asset for Mississippi. And I think graphene is going to be far bigger than that.
Okay, well, we're going to keep that under wraps. We ain't going to talk about graphene too much more because I'm finna try to. But anyway, you all know we could talk on and on and on and on. Y'all need to get this book, Riot, by Dr. Ed Meek. Now tell us where they can get the book, who published the book, and
it was published by the university, by the
University Press.
University Press. Well, the Yamatofa Press, I think it's called. But the university actually published it. And it's available on Amazon, I understand, and bookstores generally. Okay. So you can pick it up.
Like all the independent bookstores, like Reed's and Gumtree Bookstore and all that. Okay. Wonderful. We love it. I could just talk on and on. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you.
And an honor.
I'm honored to be with you.
Thank you so much. Y'all have to come back for another episode of Meet My Mississippi. Authors and artists. We're on every Friday, 9 a.m., 5 p.m. Hill Country Network. See you.
It's inside me, girl, it's in the air.
Having done this is it used its imprint somewhere. And those
exactly, it's gone, it's there, it's historical, you know what I'm saying? So that's what I was telling John about the Cofield collection.
Yeah.
Hey, somebody had to do it, you did it, and it's done, so they keep on doing it.
He's working fast on his second book.
That's my friend.
Yeah. I introduced you to him.
Yeah, I know, exactly. That's what we had kind of been back and forth on Facebook, kind of because I would share some of his stuff, but then you started telling me about it, and I was like, yeah, I need to really get in contact with it.